Admiral Vexthran's massive form cast long shadows across the command deck of the Corvani Empire's flagship. His scaled hands moved through the holographic displays, studying the data about the newly discovered human species with growing amusement. The information painted a picture of a weak, primitive civilization that would pose no real threat to the mighty Corvani Empire. The intercepted human communications were particularly entertaining. Captain Minho Park of the Human Defense Fleet could be heard complaining about outdated equipment and insufficient funding in nearly every transmission. His officers, including Lieutenant Ha Yun Kim, frequently discussed their aging ships and limited weapon systems. The humans seemed to be struggling with basic military operations, often mentioning equipment failures and supply shortages. These creatures are even weaker than the Zelthari, Vexthran rumbled to his tactical officer, Commander Dexon. At least the Zelthari had decent shields before we conquered them. The Corvani Intelligence Division had spent weeks analyzing human technology. Their ships appeared to be cobbled together from scrap metal and outdated components. Their weapons used primitive projectile systems instead of advanced energy beams. Most amusing of all, their defensive networks seemed to have more holes than actual coverage. Commander Dexon nodded his agreement. The humans broadcast their military positions openly, Admiral. They seem to have no concept of operational security. We have detailed maps of their entire defense grid. What neither Corvani officer realized was that every piece of intelligence they had gathered was carefully crafted misinformation. Captain Minho Park sat in his private quarters aboard the human vessel Soul's Pride, reviewing the latest reports from his intelligence team. Lieutenant Ha Yun Kim entered with a satisfied smile on her face. The aliens took the bait again, she reported. Our fake supply shortage complaints have them convinced we're running on empty. They've categorized our entire fleet as minimal threat level. Minho nodded approvingly. The humans had detected the Corvani surveillance probes entering their system almost 2 years ago. Instead of destroying them immediately, they had decided to use them as a weapon. Every transmission, every communication, every visible military movement had been designed to make humanity appear weak and unprepared. Lieutenant Da-Hoon Lee, the ship's communication specialist, had become an expert at creating believable complaints about equipment failures. Ensign Eugene Cho had mastered the art of making their advanced stealth ships appear like floating scrap heaps to alien sensors. The entire human fleet had been playing a massive game of deception. Back on the Corvani, Flagship Admiral Vexthran was making his final decision. The human homeworld called Earth seemed to have only basic planetary defenses. Their space fleet consisted of perhaps a dozen ships, all apparently in poor condition. The entire operation would take less than a day. Prepare battle cruiser Shadowfang. For departure, Vexthran commanded. Commander Zekrath can handle this conquest alone. One ship should be more than sufficient to force their surrender. Commander Dexon looked surprised. Only one ship, Admiral? Standard protocol requires at least a full battle group for planetary conquest. Vexthran's laugh was a harsh sound that echoed through the command center. These humans barely qualify as a spacefaring species. Sending more than one cruiser would be wasteful. Besides, Commander Zekrath needs practice with easy targets. The orders were transmitted immediately. Commander Zekrath received his mission briefing with enthusiasm. The human species had been marked for pacification and integration into the Corvani Empire. Based on the intelligence reports, resistance would be minimal at best. Meanwhile, in Earth's hidden command center buried deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, Admiral Sujin Bei reviewed the same intelligence from a very different perspective. The massive screens around her showed the true state of humanity's defenses. Hundreds of ships sat cloaked in strategic positions throughout the solar system. Advanced weapons platforms, invisible to alien sensors, waited in the darkness between planets. They're sending only one ship, reported Captain Jae-Woon Yu from his tactical station. The Corvani have completely underestimated us. Admiral Su Jin allowed herself a cold smile. Perfect. One ship means they won't expect serious resistance. When their reinforcements arrive, they'll find a very different situation than they anticipated. The human deception had worked flawlessly. Years of careful planning had led to this moment. Every fake complaint about equipment problems, every staged supply shortage, Every deliberately visible weakness had been designed to make the Corvani Empire overconfident. Captain Minho received his final orders through encrypted channels. "Let them come close," Admiral Sujin's message read. "Make them think they're winning right up until the moment we show them the truth." As the Corvani battlecruiser Shadowfang prepared to jump to human space, its crew was completely unaware that they were flying into the most sophisticated trap in galactic history. The humans they had dismissed as primitive and weak were actually the most dangerous predators the galaxy had ever seen. The age of Corvani expansion was about to end in the most spectacular way possible. Commander Zekrath would soon learn that humans had a special talent for turning apparent weakness into devastating strength. The easy conquest he expected would become the nightmare that would haunt the Corvani Empire forever. The space around Earth's outer system rippled with dark energy as the Corvani battlecruiser Shadowfang dropped out of hyperspace. The massive vessel, over 2 kilometers long and bristling with plasma cannons, hung like a metal predator against the starfield. Commander Zekrath stood on his command bridge, his reptilian features twisted into what passed for a smile among his species. "Scan the system," he ordered his sensor officer. "Show me these pathetic human defenses." The results appeared on the main display exactly as expected. A few scattered ships, apparently cobbled together from scrap metal, drifted near what looked like mining stations. The largest human vessel was less than half the size of Shadowfang and appeared to be held together with makeshift repairs. "Pitiful," Zekrath muttered. "Open communications, let us get this over with quickly." The transmission went out on all human frequencies, carrying the standard Corvani conquest demand. "Attention, primitive species. This is Commander Zekrath of the Corvani Empire. Your system now belongs to us. Surrender immediately and your deaths will be quick. Resist and suffer slowly." To his surprise, a response came back almost immediately. A human male appeared on the communication screen, wearing what looked like a simple military uniform. The man had calm eyes and spoke with an oddly polite tone. "Greetings, Commander Zekrath. I am Captain Minho Park of the human vessel Soul's Pride. We have received your message and appreciate your directness. However, such an important decision requires careful consideration. We request 24 hours to discuss your generous offer with our leadership." Zekrath stared at the screen in disbelief. Generous offer? These humans were either incredibly stupid or completely insane. No species had ever responded to a conquest demand with politeness and requests for thinking time. "You have 1 hour," Zekrath snarled back. "After that we begin destroying your installations." Captain Minho nodded respectfully. "We understand your position, Commander. 1 hour should be sufficient for our initial discussions. We will contact you with our preliminary thoughts at that time." The transmission ended. On the bridge of Soul's Pride, Captain Minho turned to his tactical officer, Lieutenant Ha-Yun Kim. Both humans were fighting hard not to smile. Every word of their conversation had been carefully rehearsed. "How long until the trap is fully ready?" Minho asked quietly. 15 minutes, sir," Ha-Yun replied, checking her instruments. "All stealth ships are moving into position. The defense platforms are powering up their cloaking systems now." Lieutenant Da-Hoon Lee, monitoring the alien ship's communications, looked up from his station. "The Corvani commander is getting impatient. He's complaining to his crew about dealing with inferior species and their primitive diplomatic customs." Minho nodded. The longer they could keep the aliens talking, the better their trap would work. But Zekrath was clearly not a patient creature. 50 minutes passed. The Corvani commander grew more agitated with each passing moment. His crew watched, nervously as he paced the bridge, his claws clicking against the metal deck plates. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "the humans are requesting additional time. They claim their leadership is still debating the terms of surrender." That was the final insult. Zekrath's patience exploded into rage. "These insects dare to waste our time. Target their nearest installation and destroy it. Show them the price of delaying the inevitable." The weapons officer hesitated. "Sir, that appears to be a civilian mining station. Our scans show minimal defensive capabilities. Perfect. Zekrath snarled. Destroy it completely. Let the humans see what happens to those who test Corvani patience. The plasma cannons of Shadowfang charged with deadly energy. Brilliant beams of superheated matter lanced across space, striking the small mining station. The structure exploded in a spectacular fireball that lit up the surrounding darkness. For a moment, silence filled the system. Then everything changed. The empty space around Shadowfang suddenly came alive with activity. Ships materialized from nowhere as their stealth systems deactivated. Dozens of vessels, far more advanced than anything the Corvani had expected, surrounded the alien cruiser. Weapon platforms that had been invisible moments before began powering up with energy signatures that made Zekrath's sensor officer gasp in shock. Impossible, Zekrath whispered. Where did they all come from? His tactical officer was frantically working his controls. Sir, our sensors show over 40 human vessels in attack positions. These readings, these ships are using technology we've never seen before. Captain Minho's voice came across the communication channel again, but now his polite tone had been replaced by something much colder. Commander Zekrath, you have just made your final mistake. That mining station contained 300 human civilians. You wanted to see our response to aggression. Consider this your education. Lieutenant Ha-Un Kim worked quickly at her station, coordinating the trap that had been months in the making. All ships report ready, Captain. Defense grid is online. The alien vessel is completely surrounded. Sir, Ensign Yujin Cho reported from sensors. The Corvani ship is trying to charge their jump drive. Should we jam their escape attempt? Min Ho considered for a moment. Not yet. Let them call for help first. I want their fleet to know exactly what they're dealing with when they arrive. Commander Zekrath found himself facing a nightmare he had never imagined. The weak primitive humans had just revealed themselves to be something far more dangerous than any species the Corvani Empire had ever encountered. Commander Zekrath watched in growing horror as his tactical display filled with red warning indicators. What had been empty space moments before now swarmed with human vessels, each one radiating energy signatures that his sensors could barely comprehend. The primitive mining operation had become a sophisticated military trap, and Shadowfang sat directly in its center. Evasive maneuvers, Zekrath barked at his pilot. Get us out of this formation. The massive battlecruiser began to turn, its engines roaring to life. But before it could complete even half a rotation, streams of brilliant energy lanced out from the human ships. These weren't the crude projectile weapons that Corvani intelligence had reported. These beams moved with impossible precision, striking Shadowfang's shield generators with surgical accuracy. Shields down to 60%, his defensive officer reported with panic in his voice. Sir, those energy weapons are adapting to our defensive frequencies. Each hit is more effective than the last. Lieutenant Da-Hoon Lee aboard Soul's Pride monitored the alien ship's communications with satisfaction. The Corvani crew was beginning to understand just how badly they had miscalculated. Their confident chatter had been replaced by confused shouts and desperate tactical reports. Captain, Da-Hoon reported to Minho, they're trying to jam our targeting systems with electronic interference, standard Corvani military procedure. Captain Minho smiled grimly. Show them why that won't work. Lieutenant Ha-Yun, deploy the swarm drones. Ha-Yun's fingers flew over her control panel. Launching swarm units now, sir. All squadrons are programmed with adaptive artificial intelligence. From the human ships came thousands of small objects, each no larger than a fighter craft, but these weren't piloted vehicles. They were AI-controlled drones, each one capable of learning and adapting to enemy tactics in real time. The swarm moved like a living thing, flowing around Shadowfang in patterns that seemed almost organic. Zekrath ordered his point defense systems to engage the approaching drones. Plasma bursts filled space as his gunners tried to shoot down the small targets. For the first few seconds, the Corvani weapons found their marks. Dozens of drones exploded in brilliant flashes. But then something impossible happened. The surviving drones began to move differently. They started dodging the plasma fire with movements that seemed to predict where the shots would be fired. Within minutes, the Corvani hit rate dropped to almost 0. "They're learning," his tactical officer whispered in disbelief. "The drones are actually learning from our attack patterns and adapting their flight paths." The swarm reached Shadowfang's hull and began their work. Instead of exploding like normal missiles, they attached themselves to the ship's armor and began cutting through it with precise energy beams. Each drone found critical systems and began disabling them with surgical precision. "Hull breaches in sections 12 through 18, damage control reported. "Sir, they're targeting our weapons, systems specifically. They know exactly where our weak points are located." Zekarath felt cold fear creeping up his spine. These humans weren't just more advanced than reported. They had detailed knowledge of Corvani ship design and engineering. Somehow, they knew exactly how to hurt his vessel most effectively. Ensign Eugene Cho at the sensor station aboard Soul's Pride was tracking the battle's progress with professional interest. "Captain, the alien ship is attempting to establish a communication link with their home fleet. Should we block the transmission?" "Let it through," Minho decided. "I want their reinforcements to hear exactly what's happening here." The communication burst from Shadowfang was filled with panic and confusion. Zekarath's voice crackled across subspace, reaching the Corvani Fleet Command. "This is Shadowfang requesting immediate assistance. The human species is not what we believed. Repeat, the humans are not primitive. They possess advanced technology and detailed knowledge of our ship systems. We are under heavy attack and taking severe damage." Admiral Vexthran, monitoring the transmission from his flagship, felt his confidence begin to crack. "Impossible. Our intelligence reports were thorough. The humans have no advanced technology." "Sir," Zekarath's voice came back, strained with desperation. "They have stealth ships that our sensors couldn't detect. Their weapons adapt to our defenses in real time. They're using artificial intelligence that learns faster than our computers can compensate. These are not the primitive creatures we expected." Back in the battle zone, Shadowfang's situation was becoming desperate. The AI drones had disabled most of the ship's primary weapons, while the human vessels maintained their perfect formation around the trapped cruiser. Every attempt to break free was countered before it could begin. Lieutenant Hayun studied her tactical display with the calm focus of a professional soldier. "Captain, their plasma shields are operating at only 20% efficiency. The adaptive beam arrays have found the resonance frequency of their defensive matrix." "Excellent work," Minho replied. "Commander Zekarath, I believe you wanted to discuss surrender terms." The alien commander's reply came through gritted teeth. "What are you? Our intelligence said you were a primitive species barely capable of spaceflight." Captain Minho's voice carried across the void, cold and precise. "We are exactly what we appear to be, Commander. The problem is that you never bothered to look carefully. You saw what you expected to see, not what was actually there. That mining station you destroyed? We've been using it to study your surveillance probes for the past 2 years. Every piece of technology you thought was secret, we've analyzed and found ways to defeat." Zekarath realized with growing horror that humanity had been playing a game far more sophisticated than he had imagined. They hadn't just hidden their true capabilities. They had actively studied their enemies and prepared specific countermeasures for every Corvani weapon and defensive system. The trap had been sprung, and there was no escape. Space itself seemed to tear apart like fabric as something massive pushed through the darkness near Earth's outer system. The distortion grew larger and larger until reality snapped back into place, revealing a ship that dwarfed everything else in the area. The UES Indomitable emerged from what appeared to be a fold in space itself, its hull stretching over 5 kilometers in length and bristling with weapon systems that had never been seen before. Commander Zekarath stared at his main display in complete shock. His sensors were giving readings that made no sense. The human flagship wasn't just larger than anything the Corvani had ever built. It was radiating energy signatures that his instruments couldn't properly measure. "Sir," his sensor officer reported with a trembling voice, "that ship is generating power levels equal to a small star. Our computers can't calculate the full extent of their weapons capability." On the bridge of the massive human vessel, Admiral Sujin Bei stood calmly before the main viewing screen. Her weathered face showed the experience of someone who had spent years preparing for this exact moment. Behind her, Captain Jae-woon Yu worked at the tactical station, his fingers dancing, over controls that managed weapons beyond Corvani understanding. "Open a channel to the alien vessel," Admiral Sujin commanded. Her voice carried the authority of someone who had never doubted this moment would come. The communication beam reached Shadowfang instantly. Commander Zekrath found himself looking at a human female whose eyes held a coldness that made his reptilian blood freeze. "Commander Zekrath," Admiral Sujin began, her words measured and precise. "I am Admiral Sujin Bei of the Human Defense Fleet. You came to our system believing you were predators and we were prey. You wanted to enslave our people and destroy our civilization. Instead, you have given us the perfect opportunity to demonstrate why that was the worst mistake your species has ever made." Zekrath tried to maintain his composure, but fear was beginning to override his military training. "Your ship is impressive, human, but one vessel cannot stand against the might of the Corvani Empire. Our fleet will arrive soon." Admiral Sujin's smile was colder than the void of space. "Your fleet? Commander, we've been monitoring your communications. We know exactly when your reinforcements will arrive, what ships they're bringing, and what tactics they plan to use. We've been ready for this day since your first scout probe entered our system 5 years ago." Captain Jae-woon looked up from his station. "Admiral, the alien ship is attempting to target our engines. Should I activate defensive measures?" "Let them try," Sujin replied calmly. "Show them what they're dealing with." Shadowfang's remaining weapons fired everything they had at the massive human flagship. Plasma beams that could melt through asteroid-sized targets struck the Indomitable's hull with tremendous force. For a moment, brilliant energy lit up the space around the human ship. Then the light faded and the Indomitable hung in space completely undamaged. "Impossible," Zekrath whispered. "Nothing can withstand that much concentrated plasma fire." His tactical officer was frantically checking his instruments. "Sir, their hull isn't just undamaged. Our energy readings show that their defensive shields actually grew stronger when we fired at them. The more energy we put into our attack, the more powerful their defenses became." Captain Jae-woon smiled as he watched his defensive display. "Adaptive energy absorption shields are working perfectly, Admiral. The alien weapons are actually charging our defensive matrix." Admiral Sujin nodded with satisfaction. "Excellent. Now show them our response." The Indomitable's weapon systems came online with a sound that seemed to make space itself vibrate. Arrays of energy cannons emerged from hidden ports along the ship's hull. But these weren't normal weapons. As they powered up, they began scanning Shadowfang's defensive systems and automatically adjusting their frequencies to find the most effective attack patterns. "Commander Zekrath," Admiral Sujin's voice cut through the alien's panic. "Your species made a fundamental error. You assumed that because we appeared weak, we actually were weak. You never considered that we might be deliberately showing you false information. The first shot from Indomitable wasn't meant to destroy Shadowfang. It was meant to demonstrate the futility of resistance." The energy beam struck the alien ship's main shield generator with such precision that it disabled the system without causing any other damage. "How did you know exactly where our shield generator was located?" Zekrath demanded. Captain Jae-woon answered from his station. "Commander, we've been studying your technology through captured probe data for 3 years. We know the design specifications of every ship in your fleet. We know your weapons, your defenses, your tactics, and your weaknesses. We've had time to develop specific countermeasures for everything you might try." Zekrath felt his world collapsing around him. "You've been watching us? For years?" Admiral Sujin's expression never changed. "Your surveillance probes weren't as stealthy as you believed. We detected the first one within hours of its arrival. Instead of destroying them, we decided to use them as a weapon. Every piece of information you gathered about us was carefully prepared to make you overconfident." The realization hit Zekrath like a physical blow. The mining operations, the equipment failures, the supply shortages, all fake, Sujin confirmed. "We fed your empire exactly the information we wanted them to have. You came here expecting an easy conquest. Instead, You found the most sophisticated trap in galactic history. The Indomitable moved closer to the crippled Shadowfang, its massive bulk blocking out the stars. Commander Zekroth realized that his species had awakened something far more dangerous than they could have ever imagined. Humanity wasn't just hiding their strength. They had turned deception itself into their most powerful weapon. The battle that the Corvani Empire had expected to last minutes instead ended with their complete and total defeat. Commander Zekroth sat in his damaged command chair, watching as his weapons officer reported that all of Shadowfang's main systems were offline. The human fleet surrounded his ship like predators circling wounded prey, their advanced vessels humming with barely contained power. "Sir," his communications officer said with a voice full of defeat, "the humans are demanding our complete surrender. They want access to all our navigation data, fleet positions, and military protocols." Zekroth wanted to refuse, to maintain some dignity in defeat. But as he looked at the massive human flagship Indomitable hanging in space before him, he realized that dignity was a luxury his species could no longer afford. The humans had demonstrated technology so far beyond Corvani understanding that continued resistance would be suicide. "Transmit our surrender," he said quietly. "Give them everything they ask for." On the bridge of Soul's Pride, Captain Min-Ho Park received the alien surrender with grim satisfaction. Lieutenant Ha-Yun Kim worked at her station, downloading terabytes of Corvani military data directly from their computers. The information flowing into human databases contained the locations of every major Corvani military base, supply depot, and populated world. "Captain," Lieutenant Da-Hoon Lee reported from his communication station, "we're receiving distress calls from multiple Corvani ships throughout their territory. Word of our victory is spreading faster than their command structure can control." Min-Ho nodded as he studied the tactical display. The red markers showing Corvani military installations stretched across dozens of star systems. Each marker represented a target that humanity could now strike at will. "Open a channel to the alien fleet," Min-Ho ordered. "It's time to deliver our terms." The transmission went out on all Corvani frequencies, reaching every ship in their empire simultaneously. Captain Min-Ho's image appeared on screens across hundreds of vessels, his calm expression more terrifying than any threat. "Attention, Corvani Empire," he began, his voice carrying clearly through space. "I am Captain Min-Ho Park of the Human Defense Fleet. Your invasion force has been defeated, your flagship captured, and your military secrets are now in our possession. You came to our system believing you were superior. You have learned today that assumption was wrong." Admiral Vexthran, watching the transmission from his own flagship deep in Corvani space, felt his scales turn pale with fear. The tactical display behind the human captain showed detailed maps of every Corvani world, every military installation, every secret base that the Empire had thought was hidden. Captain Min-Ho continued his broadcast with the methodical precision of someone reading a death sentence. "Your Empire now faces a simple choice. You can accept unconditional peace under human terms, or you can watch as we visit your worlds the same way you intended to visit ours." Lieutenant Ha-Yun stepped into view of the camera, her expression cold and professional. "We know the location of your homeworld, Corvan Prime. We know the positions of your 12 major fleet bases. We know where your manufacturing centers are located and how your supply lines operate. Your empire exists now only because we permit it to exist." The message that followed chilled every Corvani who heard it. The humans didn't just want surrender. They wanted the complete restructuring of Corvani society. All military vessels would be scrapped except for local defense forces. All conquered worlds would be freed immediately. The Corvani Empire would become a small collection of planets under human oversight. Ensign Yujin Cho, monitoring alien communications from her sensor station, reported widespread panic throughout the Corvani fleet. "Captain, their ships are breaking formation. Multiple vessels are requesting permission to return to their home systems. Let them go," Min-Ho decided. "Fear will spread our message faster than any weapon." Admiral Sujin Bei's voice joined the transmission from the bridge of Indomitable. Her weathered face filled the screen as she delivered the final ultimatum. Corvani Empire, you have 72 hours to begin implementing our terms. Any ship that attempts to flee beyond your current borders will be considered hostile and destroyed. Any world that refuses to comply will face the same fate as your invasion fleet. The display behind her showed the true scope of human military power. Ship after ship decloaked throughout the galaxy, revealing that humanity had been secretly building a massive fleet for years. Stealth vessels appeared in orbit around major Corvani worlds, their presence a clear message that resistance was futile. You came to conquer us because you believed we were weak, Admiral Sujin continued. You discovered instead that humans have a special talent. We turn apparent weakness into devastating strength. We study our enemies, learn their weaknesses, and use their own overconfidence against them. Captain Jae-woon Yu stepped forward to deliver the final blow. Your intelligence reports were not wrong about human nature, Commander Zekrath. We are indeed a young species, relatively new to space travel, but you failed to understand what that really means. We haven't had time to become set in our ways. We adapt quickly, learn faster, and we never stop improving. The transmission ended with a simple message that would haunt the Corvani Empire forever. The humans had not just won a battle. They had demonstrated that they were the most dangerous predators the galaxy had ever produced. The age of Corvani expansion was over. The age of human space had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.